All right, welcome to a special edition and another edition of Keepers of the Gloom. I'm Kyle Tucker, 35 Chop, and my special guest today is
Corey Phillips, 48, Tommy Boy.
Tommy Boy. He is downrange for a special launching of an AO and convergence today. We just wrapped up an awesome event, so we figured let's capitalize and let's do an awesome Keepers of the Gloom. So this is going to be a little bit of an extended edition, but we'll try and work through it together. So some quick hits. Where were you born?
Born in Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay. There you go. Buckeye?
Buckeye.
Oh.
I mean, by relation, but yeah.
I always find these things out later, and it just brings sadness. What do you do for Mammon?
I am the marketing communications director for a nonprofit called Peace Haven, which is a farm designed for adults living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the overall mission is to bring people of all abilities together and reinvent intentional community.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. What's your home AO?
Home AO is Cornwallis Nightmare in Greensboro, North Carolina.
That is an awesome name.
Cornwallis Nightmare.
Okay. What's the home region?
Home region is Natville, also known as F3 Greensboro.
Okay. Awesome. When we go to cafeteria after a beatdown, what's your go-to cafeteria drink?
I am pretty basic. A London Fog, which is Earl Grey tea with a little bit of a shot of cream in it.
Okay. All right. You were telling me about an exercise the other day when I picked you up from the airport about that you like to do, but what is when you're queuing a workout, your go-to exercise?
The hardest one I know that I love to call is full eye contact pickle pushers.
I won't ask any more
Let's
questions
get weird.
What's the one that to this day, and you've told us you've been involved for well over 10...
Coming up on 9 years.
9 years.
Yes.
Okay, 9 years. Okay.
Yep.
My math is wrong. It's a Saturday. You've been involved for a long time. To this day, what is still the most dreaded exercise when it gets called for you?
The most dreaded exercise is a really basic one too. I don't like toy soldiers or Frankensteins. Which is, yes, arms out, feet. I break a sweat trying to tie my own shoes.
Okay.
I'm just not flexible. So if somebody calls a toy soldier, those are days I almost want to run to the car.
Okay. So you've also, as a part of F3 Nation and part of the national leadership team, you've been to a lot of different AOs across the country. So for our PACs in Wichita and any of them that are watching, when you're visiting downrange, what are a few AOs and regions that they should definitely hit up?
Yeah, so for anybody who's traveling, some of my, if I want to do top 3, and it's not just because I'm here, but you guys have a lot going on. You're a newer region relatively, and there's so much energy and there's always opportunities to learn new things. But shout out to you guys and kudos for everything you did today, because those little moments you have where you put together events like this, guys are going to be on fire for that sort of thing. So that's what I look for, is a region that makes it about the guy who's there for the first time. So you guys crushed that today. Special place in my heart for F3 Omaha. Shout out to Wait Time and Tater Tot and all the guys out there. For the same reason, they realized early on too that it's about making it open to all men and accessible and fun. It's just big boy recess.
Yeah.
So they've got that dialed in. And then I got to go to the mountains of North Carolina and shout out Boone. So there's something special about F3 Boone. I think it was the day I showed up and asked if anybody had a pair of gloves, and they're like, "We don't wear sissy mitts." And I was like, "You guys are my people." So anytime I'm in the mountains, I'll go to Boone and post with those fellas.
All right, so not just one, 3.
Yeah.
3 downrange places you can visit. Okay, we have a section in here of questions. It's more about your journey with F3. So how did you hear about F3?
I was at a non-sanctioned, I practice Christian faith, so I was at a non-sanctioned church camping group. So basically all the people at church who like to do fun things together. So we went camping. A buddy of mine, F3 Stretch, EH'd me, and I was able to dodge those bullets long enough until F3 Short Track called me one night and said, "I'll be in your driveway tomorrow at 5:30, and I'll be honking if I don't see you." And so I knew that I needed to not be absent. So they drugged me out to my first AO, which was Cornwallis Nightmare.
Okay, and so I think you gave the name of the guy who's your F3 father. That's
F3 Stretch / Short Track. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a 1-2 punch. Took me to get out.
What did you think about F3 before you actually attended your first beatdown? if you can go back that far.
It was so quick because again, I was just dodging. I gave all the excuses. You know, it's too early. It's let me get in shape before I get in shape. All the things. So I didn't do any homework on it. And then again, Short Track called and said, I'm going to be there, so you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah,
so I had no time to look it up other than, do I have shoes that I can actually move around in?
Yeah.
So that was it. That was it. I had no preconceived notions.
Do you remember what the first beatdown was?
I'll never forget it. Yeah, it was a cinder block. It was called the Clock of Doom, Doomsday Clock, excuse me, and it was cued by Kilowatt. And it was 12 stations with cinder blocks, and I'm huffing it out, 3 basic exercises at each station. And I kept looking at, I'm almost back to noon. I'm almost back to noon. And I thought we were done. It's like, all right, rinse and repeat. I was like, what does that mean? Like, we're going to go through it again. Who's we? You have a turd in your pocket? So we went through it again, and that was a slog fest. And then he's like, all right, guys, we're going to do a relay sprint race to the tree and back. And I thought I was going to die. And the guy behind me obviously knew I was going to die, so he said, hey, buddy, you don't have to go all out here. And so I learned the hard way. I should have listened to him. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how would you describe just overall your F3 journey so far?
In no uncertain terms, it's been life-changing.
Yeah.
And as we shared earlier today, it's the realization that life is not about me, it's about the guy next to me, or the family next to me, or the colleague next to me. And when you make it not about you, it's easier to deal with things that come at you because you remember you're not alone. And that consistent message from F3's men has been incredibly powerful, as well as the correct definition of what a leader is. It's not the title on the business card. It's the way that you can get fired up about something that you want to change or something you want to improve and convince other men to come along with you.
Yep, definitely. So lighter note, how did you get Tommy Boy for an F3 name?
Used to live in Jackson, Wyoming, the epicenter of all things comedy, and was a part owner of an improv comedy group. So after sharing that I used to work for the Heart Association and I built furniture out of reclaimed materials, crickets. And then I said that, and they just started shouting out Chris Farley movies. But I knew not to argue and say that's not improv, or else I would have been called something much worse. So Tommy Boy.
Okay, all right. All right, so what's been, thinking about some highlights right now, what's been your favorite F3 moment so far?
Oof, there's a litany. I know I shared several today. I'm trying to come up with a new one for you.
No, you can do whatever you want.
I have to go back to when F3 made sense to me for the first time. It was a 4th of July weekend. I started at the end of May, so a couple months later, big convergence. A bunch of us were going to run a 5K. I was going to quit F3 that day. So I was like, hey guys, I forgot my gloves. I'm going to run home and get them real quick and I'll be back. I had no intention of coming back. And this fella, F3 Daphne, said, oh, I've got gloves. So I'm like, great, thanks a lot for nothing. So he gave me his gloves. I slogged it out next to him. Hated the whole thing. In my head the whole time, this guy's better than I am. He's faster, stronger, richer. Look at his car. And then he shared some really heavy stuff in COT. And so who was I to put all that weight on that guy's shoulders and then elevate him to a pedestal? That's not fair. That makes it about me. And so very egocentric. And I realized in that moment what I said a moment ago, which is when it's not about you, it's a lot easier to stand back and realize that you're surrounded by people that you can help get better and they want you to get better.
Yeah.
And that clicked for me. That was the moment. There was no looking back.
So as far as like benefits that you've seen, you talked about a lot of just different emotional ones. What about health benefits that you've seen since joining F3?
The day before, when Short Track called and said, I'll see you tomorrow morning, I weighed myself that night. I'm 5'10", I weighed 215. Not a lot of improvement, but cardiovascular improvement certainly to get to that 5K. And then by my birthday, which is December 14th, so you think about 7-ish months, I dropped 55 pounds.
Man, that's
awesome. That was a big one.
Yeah. So you've kind of inspired this next question that we've started to throw in ask packs is not just what health benefits have you seen, but what about mental health? Have you seen any benefits there since joining F3?
Yeah, and I know you've heard me say this 1,000 times now, so here comes 1,001. The quote that has really wrapped up the answer to that question comes from a book by Charlie Mackesy called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And in it, the boy turns to the horse, which is kind of the the Obi-Wan character and says, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And the horse replies with, "Help." Because asking for help is not giving up, it's the refusal to give up.
Yeah.
And that, I can't think of any better way to say that that's what I've seen time and time again when guys cry out. You think about, we both practice the same faith, religious faith. When anybody in the scripture cries out, that's when he shows up. And it's the same in F3. When you're brave enough to ask for help, the guys come in droves to offer help, whether it's a move or just putting hands on a dude and telling him you love him, or helping network to find the guy's next career move.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, guys always show up when you're brave enough to say help.
Well said. Well said. What's been your most memorable beatdown?
Most memorable beatdown. It was one that I cued. Guy named Gunny. He had lost his father. Career politician for all the right reasons, just a helper of helpers. And Gunny naturally was having a tough time with it. So we had all kind of secretly said, hey, let's do a hero wad for Gunny's dad. And we made sure a ton of guys showed up, and we built it, like many hero wads, significant numbers and dates within his life. And Gunny never once understood why 32 men showed up at this workout that's usually 8. And it was raining, and I modified a little bit. It's like at some point I'm taking the guys out into the rain to do a portion of this workout. So we're constantly moving with rucks and sandbags in and out of the rain. And it wasn't until, we thought he knew, but it wasn't until COT when we presented the plaque that had the WOD printed and the reasons for it all. And you could just tell, again, like Gunny just opened up, and it wasn't about me. It was just an idea I had. It was about all the guys who rallied around Gunny to be there in a moment when all he needed was for guys to show up for him, whether he asked or not. Because sometimes, as we know in our credo, it's not about leaving a man where you, or making sure the man isn't left where you found him. It's about, encouraging him to go. No one's left behind. No one's left where we found him. Gunny didn't need to stay in that place too long. To go through the grief process, you have to move through it. And we just got to be there at the front end.
Yeah. So for you, you've experienced a lot of beatdowns too. Who is a cue that you want to give a shout out to that always brings a brutal beatdown?
By shout out, do you mean middle fingers?
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, right, because we all have guys that when you see his name on the cue roster, you're like, oh, I'm setting my alarm for that one. and I'm not proud about it, or I'm not happy because it's going to be hard. There's a guy named Crawlspace out of F3 Greensboro.
Okay. Whenever
I see his name, I want to get there because I know not only does he bring a great beatdown that's going to be tough, and to me, the ones that are the best are the ones that you almost can't finish.
Yeah.
Because they really push you to your limit. But then he also brings a great mental nugget for the COT. And I know us being in the South, a lot of times we tend to end with a Christian prayer. And that's great. It really is. I learn more about myself, my faith journey, when I hear from other faith practices or hear a great historical quote or a piece of a book that a guy's reading. All it does is further strengthen the foundation of my journey. So Crawlspace is great at doing that.
Good shout out. Shout out to Crawlspace.
Aye.
All right, so you've kind of alluded to it in some of these questions, but to answer it specifically, what keeps you coming back to F3 all these years?
Yeah, it's being around the fellows. It's big boy recess is what we do. And if that energy isn't put out in a positive way, odds are it's going to be drawn out in a negative way for me. And so showing up each day is kind of like just making sure I've got the hard thing out of the way. And again, the constant reminder that I'm not in this by myself. Because the more you surround yourself with more people in true community, the more opportunity you find to serve, which then invites purpose into your life. And again, we've talked about this before, but Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, with the right why, purpose, you can overcome any how. And so showing up every day allows me to find more ways to answer the how. Because I have the why, I just need to show up for it.
Good question, or good answer, sorry.
It was a good question too.
Shout out Chop.
Yeah, shout out Chop, hashtag
We'll
Chop.
separate that out and call that out as its own little highlight reel. So you've invited a ton of guys, even your guy who checked you in at your hotel last night.
Yes.
I get a text from him. I think I EH'd the guy who's at the front desk.
Not giving up.
Well, I'm not surprised at all. So you've had a lot of guys probably show up and post at F3 Suns. Which one are you most proud of and why that you want to give a shout out to?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm proud of all of them because the ones who keep showing up, right? I'm trying to think of a really great story. It was probably the one where I told this guy all about it and then didn't show up the next day.
Yeah.
Because there was no sign in his face that he was going to show up. So I just kind of washed it off and I posted to another AO. Lo and behold, he showed up. So, oops. And I always feel like we don't have a name for when that happens. I've heard Starsky. I don't understand the connection, and I'm not too far from the removal of that when that show ended and I came to be on this planet. But trying to find a great name for EHing a guy and not being there when he shows up. Call it Tommy Boy. I don't care. You got TB'd. But that guy has gone on to do step into many, many leadership roles.
Yeah.
And that's just been fun to watch. One of my favorites is a guy named Snowflake out of F3 Greensboro. Been on him for about 18 months. And finally one day, I think I just broke him. And he showed up. And he has been a mentor to me for a long time. Our families have known each other. My younger sister used to babysit his kids. So yeah, Scott Kinsey, Snowflake. That's one that just every time I see him, it's a big smile.
Yeah. Who was the first guy that you were talking about?
That
Showed up and
F3 six pack.
Six pack. Okay.
Yeah, he's
Shout
got
out six pack.
6 kids. Yes.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
Yep.
How does it feel? You kind of alluded to this with one of the guys that go on and do a lot of leadership role. How does it feel to see F3 impact a guy that you invited? Maybe it helps them mentally, physically, whatever. But you just see that transformation and them change. What does that do for you?
It just keeps putting fuel in my tank. It just underscores the importance of what we do here at F3, how Big Boy Recess translates into impact for the greater community. There's just something about, even today, standing up there's always somebody who is either physically leaning in when you're sharing about F3, or there's a glint in the eye where it's like, oh, he's trying to figure something out and he's made a connection between what we're selling and what he's seeking. And that's a powerful moment because I know that's one more guy who will assist 10 more people in his neighborhood. And that's the kind of growth that you're looking for.
No. So when I say the term that we throw out all the time, high impact man, for you, what's the one guy that comes to mind?
For me, it has to be Daphne.
Okay.
The guy that made F3 make sense to me. He is pivotal in all 3 Fs. Even if he's physically unable to show up to a workout, finds ways to encourage the men. When I do my 8-block practice, I list out guys who have traits and qualities that I want to learn and emulate. He's almost always on that list because he's always got something to give and gives it freely. With passion and authority and conviction.
Yeah, good word. So before we get into some Grow Ruck and Wichita region specific questions, one of the questions that we usually end these interviews with is, in a few sentences, tell the PAX why F3 is so special to you.
Because it has allowed me to step into that role of being a leader, being a high impact man, or I should say endeavoring, right? You practice being a leader. You don't learn it and then instantly know it. You always practice. And the idea of doing hard things makes, if you get really good at doing hard things, then hard things aren't as hard. If you want to have a hard life, learn how to do easy things. If you want to have an easier life, get good at doing hard things. And I would say that's the number one takeaway for me. Because when I sit there and think, oh man, this is really hard, and I'm sitting in a meeting, like, this is not really hard. This is a thing that we can figure out together. Hard is week 3 of the Iron PAX Challenge, right? That's like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, but then you realize, oh, I do know. I'm gonna slog it out, and the guys are gonna drag me along if they have to.
Yeah. Good answer. All right, so we met you at Grow Ruck GTE 43.
Aye.
I don't have a patch on.
I've got 17.
You got 17. So we met you at GTE 43 down in Houston, Fort Bend. Shout out to all those guys. We asked our packs, the 10 that went, we said, hey, we're going to do this interview with Tommy Boy. Give us some questions for him. And relative to Go Ruck, they wanted to know, as we recruit guys, is Grow Ruck for everyone? Who's it for?
My knee-jerk answer is probably partially incorrect. It is for anybody who has ever wondered to themselves, what's my full potential? And in order to answer that question, you have to reach your breaking point and fail. I don't think, you can't say I can do 20 push-ups and then it's true. You can do push-ups until you fail and know, oh, I can do 3, I can do 8. And the only way you get better is by doing more push-ups or pull-ups. You know, whatever it is you're trying to do, you know, if you want to run faster, run with guys who are faster than you. The entire purpose of Grow Ruck is to fill your head with this knowledge and then stuff it down your face until hopefully it hits your heart and then gives you that dynamite to explode out into the community and find more ways to serve. So is F3 Grow Ruck for everyone? Part of me wants to say absolutely. Only if you're willing to train and know that you're going to fail so that you can ultimately succeed.
So what do you say to somebody who's like, I'm kind of on the fence?
Get off the fence and let's go. It's the same thing if you're reaching a guy to F3, right? It's like, oh, what am I going to, it's 5:30 in the morning. What else are you going to do at 5:30 in the morning? Let me get in shape. Before you come out and get in shape, like you're going to go pregame before you pregame?
Yeah.
So if you're on the fence, it means that you've already thrown one leg over. So get the other leg over and stop wondering what's going to happen next. Because A, I can't tell you. B, if I do, it'll ruin some things. And C, you're only going to come back better. So, and better hurts sometimes. In fact, a lot of times.
Yes, bring back way too many vivid memories right now. So is there anyone that shouldn't do it? Or is it really, hey, if you feel like it, do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe this is Tommy Boy speaking.
Yeah.
There is no tie-in to the overall mission of F3 and the structure. Again, I kind of want to say yes, anybody can. However, I think that anybody who wants to or is considering on the fence, they have to train. And your training will let you know if it's impossible for you. Maybe you're dealing with a hip issue or a shoulder thing. We don't want anybody, there's a difference between getting hurt. You know, sure you don't want to get hurt, but we definitely don't want anybody to get wounded, right? So your training will tell you if you are not yet physically prepared.
Okay.
There is no training that will mentally prepare you for Grow Ruck, and that's the whole point. Because think of it, your hardest times in your life, you're not mentally prepared for that, they just happen. So I would say your training will tell you, and there's no cheat code to Grow Ruck. I see a lot of regions sharing secret packing lists and make sure you have, the favorite part and least favorite part about 17 for me was failing towards the event, which was reaching out and doing my own homework and asking guys, hey, what's your sock game? What's your shoe game? What did you recommend? Not being presented with that, right? It's like playing Contra, and if you know the 30-man code, then Contra's not a hard game. But if you don't, I mean, this is a dated reference, but yeah, there's no cheat code. So, and if there is, then you're just cheating yourself.
That's fair. So we've been asking kind of more for our benefit, but what about for you? What has the effect of that Grow Ruck event and others had on you?
It's underscored, it goes back to what I said a moment ago, honestly. It underscores that in order, I can phrase it up this way, and I know it's not his quote, but I first heard him say it. Dark Helmet, the life you are seeking is hiding around the corner from the work you are avoiding. So going through Grow Ruck made me do the work and fail forward, fail fast, fail often. And all of a sudden on the other side, you know, it was 2 or 3 days after the event when I'm healing, but I realized I'm able to do a lot more than I've ever given myself credit for. And that echo effect has continued, not only every time I show up at a Grow Ruck or serve as a trainer or talk about Grow Ruck, but in everything I do, I'm reminded yeah, this moment is hard, but I went through 15 to 18 hours of hell, and I made it through the other side because I just put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat.
Yep, definitely. All right, so for our region, the guys that brought you out here really appreciate the support and the encouragement that you've had for us. I mean, you were very kind with your words, even while we were there at Fort Bend. Afterwards, you reached out to us, asked some of us to come on a podcast and talk with you in an Italian Job, and Pringles has had come back a couple times, and we hear you out there talking about us.
You guys are the
Good
ones
grief.
listening.
Well, we're one of them, but we appreciate that and everything you're doing for the nation and internationally. Being outspoken, I think a lot of us appreciate that too. Being outspoken for men's mental health, and a lot of the bringing awareness to what's going on with that, and even the connection to the things spiritually, right? So. Before we ask you questions about us, we just want you to know that we really appreciate all that you've done. You were kind of the first person that was outside and kind of identified and encouraged us to keep going and to say, hey, there's something bigger there that you guys have got that you're working towards. Keep doing it. We would call you our chief encourager. So thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
That's an honor.
To that point, what do you see right now about the Wichita region? You just sat through a 2-3 hour event with us and went through a convergence. What are your thoughts?
I mean, geographically, I can see all of the Wichita region as I stand and look out the windows here. I can see my house from here in Greensboro. I see you guys, and I shared this at Grow Ruck. You guys are obviously at that magic sweet spot where you're starting to build critical mass and you're about to burst. And I think today was today you lit the fuse for the next phase of growth. Because I saw the energy from everyone who's your original Nantan to showing up today for the first time. Remember that somebody out there that you have yet to meet but will meet needs this as bad as you realized you needed it when that light bulb went off. So get excited about seeking those men out. Invite as many guys as possible. Don't get hung up on bringing them out to just a First F event. If somebody's just lockstep, not going to move and show up at a First F, but you know there's something within them that you need, your region needs, invite him out to a Second F event. Let him be reminded of what it looks like to surround yourself with guys that care about you. Because we all had, as little kids, we were all like thrown into the mix by our parents and had a good time, right? Or we came home with chicken pox. But the idea is there's a core memory there for every guy, and they're going to see that and then say, oh, now I get why they keep talking to me about those workouts. And if something in the Wichita community excites you and you want to see more of it, and encourage those men to speak up and say, oh, I know of this organization that we could come alongside, or you know who does a really cool thing is this group. And transversely, if something is upsetting you and you want to fix it, you have ideas, bring a bunch of guys around, encourage guys to speak up. Remind guys every day that the SLT doesn't make be-all, end-all decisions. The SLT exists to remove obstacles from guys who are seeking to accelerate.
Good question. Or good question. Good again. Okay. You've seen a lot of different regions. You mentioned Omaha. You from Greensboro. You were in Nantan there. Specifically, coming to Wichita, how has the culture you've seen it be on fire in those ways?
You guys do what all successful regions do, which is you invest as much in the third F as you do the second F as you do the first F. I always challenge regions to behave each day in such a way that if they were to vanish tomorrow, that the community would recognize there is an absence of good men. Lord knows we talk all day about what an absence of good, virtuous leaders look like, especially in the male psyche. If you do that, you'll naturally support all three legs of the F3 stool in such a way that they will each strengthen one another. So think about COVID. When COVID hit, a lot of regions relied heavily on their first F. Not a lot, but there were regions who relied heavily on the first F. And when that was gone, as we tried to figure out what is this thing we're avoiding each other for, they had no fallback. Whereas the regions who invested just as much in 2 and 3 or hopping on Zoom calls, or finding out ways to work out with some distancing and cinder blocks, or creating new AOs, or whatever it was, or just opening up opportunities to share ways that they could ask for help or serve the community. And they're thriving. In fact, COVID probably made them even stronger.
Good point. Good point. So where does Wichita go from here? Do you have any recommendations or areas that we could improve on based on what you saw today?
Invite every man to step into a leadership role and remind him that you're not asking him to chair a committee, because that's just doing busy work. Remind him, again, if there's something you're passionate about, tell us. We want to know. We want to help you make that a reality. And you'll find, sometimes the most strange place and sometimes the most unexpected places, that there's a guy who just needed to be unlocked. And F3 was the key that allowed that to happen so that he could step into his purpose, his potential.
Yeah.
That's where the secret sauce is. It's fine to go out and see what other regions are doing. Lord knows that's why we have stuff worth trying.
Yep.
And it almost always comes from the guy who was given that one chance to speak up and say, I have an idea. I would keep seeking those guys out and creating pockets that they can step into. We were talking a minute ago that nature hates a void. So when something is taken out of that space, nature finds a way to fill it. So be that force multiplier that fills that void quicker. And there's a guy out there or a group of men who will fill it real quick.
Yeah. Good word. Good word. Well, thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
you being here, coming down. This has been another special edition, very extended edition, but very good nonetheless, episode of Keepers of the Gloom. To learn more, visit f3wichita.com to find out more about us. But to learn more about where F3 is happening across the globe, visit f3nation.com to see all the good work that Tommy Boy and his brother Italian Job are working on. Anything else you want to plug?
Stuffworthtrying.com.
Yeah, baby.
It is a toolbox with a ton of tools. All you have to do is log on. Don't have to log on, just hit the website. And if you're looking for something out there and you can't find it, reach out to us. But odds are you'll stumble across it. And if you have a tool that needs to be added to our toolbox, let us know, because F3 is free, which means nobody owns it, which means we're called to give it away. So that's how we do it, by paying it forward.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Till next time, we'll see you in the gloom.